But no, I don't remember. Remember where the cutoff is.
Well, this one definitely has sewn in eyes.
Yeah, those are good. Those are okay.
I'm gonna live through this child.
Live through the child?
Yeah.
I mean, that is what you do, I suppose. You live vicariously through them.
My parents didn't teach me how cool octopi were, but now I get to learn, so.
There is no way that's real.
It's not real because, well, I don't want to say that because people will get upset, but.
That man?
No. The martial arts training.
Martial arts training to fend off an axe-wielding man attempting to burglarize a church. What are you taking from a church, though? They don't have anything.
What are you taking from a martial arts class?
Well, that's also true, yeah. That's also a good point. Is a good point.
New pack of giant sharks? That's sick.
Do they have cloth eyes?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, they do.
Oh, that's cutie.
Yeah,
That is a cute boy. Has anyone else gotten crazy snow or just us in northeast Ohioans? The state names for people are so ridiculous. We got snow, but not a lot. I thought that was a Florida church, not California. It appears to be California. Or it is false reporting. Either way, I would like to see a video of whatever happened there. Go says, Pennsylvania sucks.
That's true.
Kat agrees with this.
It's better than New Jersey, though, so count your blessings.
It was 80 degrees today for Mystic. Where are you? I guess you probably don't want to say. Are you Florida? You don't have to say. We've gotten over a foot, 14 inches since Thursday night. We had snow like, what, a week ago? But it was not a lot.
2 weeks ago. Whenever I made the stew, it was snowing, which is why I made the stew.
Right. Houston. Okay, well that makes sense too. Graves, you're on time and not with the client. Good work. I shouted at him to stop and that the police were on their way, and he ran and I grabbed a hold of him and we ended up wrestling in the parking lot of the church. So he chased him as he was trying to leave.
That's illegal.
The pastor added that his martial arts training training helped him control the situation without causing significant harm to the intruder. I was able to pin him to the ground, and he got up and tried to get away several times, but basically just trying to wear him out because I knew I could outlast him.
See, that's how you know it's not a Florida story, because it would look very different. Nobody in Florida would say, my martial arts training helped me protect this establishment.
If it was in Florida, somebody would be no longer breathing.
Well said.
Still at work. David. Hey, everyone. I'm looking forward to studying with you all tonight. Erie, PA had up to 3 feet, just about 2 to 3 inches, 44 minutes south of Erie.
That's gross.
That's not too bad. That's so true, but the headline screamed Florida. Yeah, well, I get that for sure. I agree with that. This is the type of headline you get out of South Florida. Pastor uses martial arts to fend off an axe-wielding man attempting to burglarize a church. That's a wild headline. God. All right, we'll start in a second. Just fair warning, but nobody said anything yet, so I think it's okay. But I had to destroy everything I was doing with the audio, so if it sounds different or weird, please specifically tell me why or how, so I can try to fix it. But I think I got it to a decent point, so just keep an ear out.
I gotta go to work, friends.
Hurry.
Um,
Hurry so fast.
my snakes need me.
I know.
I'll be back in for these two guys.
Sounds pretty similar to me, Joe. I wouldn't have noticed. Okay, cool.
I'll be back.
Well, that's great news. Great news, because it is 1,000% different. So that's great to hear. Probably sounds 5% tinnier than usual, but not bad. Okay. Well, we can try there. I just did a little something. I had everything was beautifully set up using one program. And now I had to move to a totally different program, and it's just not as smooth. It's a big boy audio program that I am just not qualified to use. So I spent half of an entire day trying to figure it out, but glad to hear it. So let's roll. If you are watching this later and you're not in the Discord, you should join the Discord. There's a link pinned to the live chat, and there's also a link in the description of the video. It's where everybody hangs out and chats and sometimes argues, but not normally. Most important thing, I suppose, if you want to hang out with us live, is the events tab in Discord. We do 3 of these a week. 2 of them are Bible studies, kind of. One is a strict Bible study. That's tonight, Sundays. Thursday is, from now on, for now, Apocrypha mostly. But right now we are in the Epic of Gilgamesh to add important context to understanding a lot of the Old Testament. And then we'll go back into the Book of Giants, which we started. And then Tuesday is a live topic discussion that everybody votes on. So we post a poll once a week. We vote. And this Tuesday, we're doing What is the Trinity and is it biblical? Which is a great topic. Tough topic, but good topic. And so that's that. So if you're not in Discord, join Discord. Tonight is Genesis, getting close to the end. We're inching towards the end. PA only sucks in the winter weather. Is the summer weather actually nice there? I think I've only been in fall and winter. And I've been a lot. I just don't think I ever made it during the summer. Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams. Pharaoh's dream. Singular. No, plural. Plural. Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams. After 2 whole years, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile. 2 years have passed since Pharaoh restored the cupbearer to his position. If you remember the whole fiasco with Joseph in prison, one second. When he got jailed, he was with the cupbearer and the other employee of the Pharaoh. Then there was this whole dramatic thing at the end where Joseph's like, please, tell him that I'm good and that he needs to get me out of here. Bunch of drama. This is kind of a kickback to it and letting you know distance-wise how far we have come. Dreamed that he was standing by the Nile 2 whole years after he had restored the cupbearer, who was also jailed, to the position, and he had unalived the other one that was in jail with Joseph. And behold, there came up out of the Nile 7 cows, attractive and plump, and they fed in the reed grass. And behold, 7 other cows, ugly and thin, came up out of the Nile after them, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. I want to read this. The sustenance of the entire nation depended on the Nile. It flooded every year, providing millions of acres of arable land for the nation's food. Egyptians viewed the Pharaoh as the incarnation of a god, which we're going to talk a little bit about on Tuesday, but this would be Horus, and as the maintainer of the divinely imposed order on earth. That's their perspective of the Pharaoh. Any irregularity in the annual flooding of the Nile was taken as a sign of weakness or illegitimacy with respect to Pharaoh's rule, which is important context when reading it, because it adds a lot to the feel of what's going on. Verse 4. And the ugly, thin cows ate up 7 attractive, plump cows. And Pharaoh awoke, and he fell asleep and dreamed a second time. And behold, 7 ears of grain, plump and good, were growing on one stalk. And behold, after them sprouted 7 ears, thin and blighted by the east wind. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump, full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. It was a dream. I love how they say this throughout the latter half of Genesis. The king's dream, or king's dreams in general, were often, most dreams, if we're being honest though, but kings had a different significance. All dreams had significance because they were like the primary means. They were one of the primary means of communication between the divine and the humans. It's come up 1,000 times just in Genesis. But then all throughout the rest of the Old Testament, king's dreams specifically, but all dreams definitely, kings specifically, there was often a assigned importance to them in the Near East in general. So here with Judaism, but also outside. And we'll touch on a little bit of it in the story we're reading on Thursdays. But important. Assigned significance, very important. So in the morning, his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. I want to read this. So the Hebrew word used here for magicians, sharatum, don't know, is probably borrowed from the Egyptian language itself. It is used by biblical writers only with respect to royal personnel of Egypt and Babylon. The reason it's known is because the only other time it comes up is out of Daniel. Daniel 1:20 or 2:2. 1:20 and 2:2. Since the dream does not conform to reality, cows do not eat cows, stalks of corn do not eat stalks of corn, Pharaoh calls for his magicians to interpret it, and all its wise men. The Hebrew term used there is very similar to that used for magician, occurs often though in the Old Testament, ironically enough also in Daniel. So these are mirrored amongst each other in the terms that they choose to use. It refers to people in the king's immediate circle who were either skilled in divination, discerning the will of deities based on using objects, omens, or particular methods, or served as advisors to the Pharaoh. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was none who could interpret them to Pharaoh. So they all failed miserably. Body shaming, body shaming cows. Beautiful summers for the most part. I would imagine. Like Chicago summers are actually really nice. Sometimes extremely hot, but really nice. We just get brutal winters, super brutal winters. Oh no, are we needing to say unalive? Now, I'm just being careful. On this YouTube, I just want to be careful because, just because. On the other one, I do not care at all. We've already blown it. Hi. Patricia, it's good to see you. Oh, by the way, Rodriguez, it's good to see you. I read your thing and responded, but I didn't say hello, so hello. I hope everyone is doing well tonight. Is it the same as Sheldy? No. 80% confidence in that no. Only 80 though. So if you look into it and I'm wrong, please let me know. Okay, verse 9. And depending, this is a long chapter, so we may only read one. Just kind of depends. We'll see how it goes. Verse 9. Then the chief cupbearer, which again was important from the prior chapters, when Joseph asked him to remember me, please remember me when you go back to Pharaoh, the cupbearer did not remember him, which I pointed out. I think that's kind of BS. I think he chose to not say something to Pharaoh because his life was already kind of on thin ice. And I think speaking highly of somebody who was even just potentially problematic to the Pharaoh would have been an unwise thing to do. Regardless, though, he told him to remember him. He did not. The chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, I remember my offenses today. When Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me and the chief baker in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, we dreamed of the same night, he and I, each having a dream with its own interpretation. Remembering that the one who is still alive, who had one of those dreams, is this gentleman. The other man who had a dream, Joseph had told him, like, yeah, you're going to die. And this is how you're going to die. And then that happened. This is the survivor of the two. A young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. When we told him, he interpreted our dreams to us, giving an interpretation to each man according to his dream. And as he interpreted to us, so it came about. So it came true. I was restored to my office, and the baker was hanged, which is exactly what happened. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they quickly brought him out of the pit. And when he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came in before Pharaoh. Now, the Hebrew there, they quickly brought him out of the pit. The Hebrew there, yaritzu, is from the Hebrew term for to run and reflects Pharaoh's sense of urgency. So literal running, just for clarity's sake. And then he shaved. He had shaved himself. Likely that all of him was shaved. That his head, maybe not all of him, I guess, to be fair, that his head and his beard were shaved, which was a hell of a lot in this culture to be completely shaved, and really only happened for specific reasons. Egyptians were generally clean shaven. Hebrews were not. So kind of a big deal. It's iconic in a sense. Pharaoh said, your cakes are trash. Your cakes are trash. Now you die. So he shaved himself and changed his clothes. He came in before Pharaoh, and Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. The magicians have failed. I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph answered Pharaoh, it is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. I'm going to butcher this phrase. So, I mean, shalom I got, but Yaene, shalom. I'll put it in the chat there. That phrase occurs only here. One time. Right there, baby girl. The first word is a form of a verb that usually means to answer. Anah, A-N-A-H. A close parallel appears in Psalms 122:6, which says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they be secure who love you. Where the verb shalal, S-H-A-A-L, meaning to ask, is used in the phrase sha'alu shalom, which means pray or ask for the welfare. I just thought interesting because of the scarcity of the phrase itself. Worth pointing out, in my humble opinion. 17. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, behold, in my dream, I was standing on the banks of the Nile. 7 cows, plump and attractive, came up out of the Nile and fed in the reed grass. 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and thin, such as I had never seen in all the land of Egypt. And the thin, ugly cows ate up the first 7 plump cows. But when they had eaten them, no one would have known that they had eaten them, for they were still as ugly as at the beginning. Then I awoke. I also saw in my dream 7 ears growing on one stalk, full and good. 7 ears withered, thin, and blighted by the east wind sprouted after them. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 good ears. And I told it to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty ears, blighted by the east wind, are also 7 years of famine. It is, as I told Pharaoh, God has shown to Pharaoh what he is about to do. Then will come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, but after them there will arise 7 years of famine, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will consume the land, and the plenty will be unknown in the land by reason of the famine that will follow, for it will be very severe. And the doubling of Pharaoh's dreams meant that the thing is fixed by God, and God will shortly bring it about. Shortly bring it about, established by God. Let me grab this. Greater emphasis on the famine. This is from Logos. Joseph places greater emphasis on the famine to come than the years of plenty that will precede it. Verses 29 through 31 devote only one sentence to the years of plenty, verse 29, but 5 sentences to the years of famine, 30 and 31. This imbalanced emphasis conveys the gravity of the situation. And then 37 through 57. Okay, I'll come back to this. Now, therefore, let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh proceed to appoint overseers over the land and take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plentiful years. And let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. That food shall be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish, though through the famine. So the land may not perish through the famine. I don't know about the gravity. I don't disagree with you. It's definitely assumptive, right? I was thinking the same thing. So she's referring to that last note out of Logos, which was greater emphasis placed on the famine to come. It was based on how many sentences were devoted to the famine versus the plenty. 1 sentence explaining the plenty, 3 or 5 sentences explaining the gravity, the negative. Does word count really? Does that what decides like what the author meant? I don't know. I've had a very similar thought. Could. Like, it's fair, I suppose. It's a fair assumption, but it's definitely not like factual. I just think that more instruction is needed for the negative. I agree. I think there are like a number of reasons why an author would use more time explaining that which is negative than that which is positive. I think there are a few reasonable reasons that somebody might do that. Now, I want to read this because it's a decent little synopsis of 37 through 57, which we're about to read. Pharaoh promotes Joseph following the satisfactory interpretation of his dreams. So this is when he gets his promotion. He recognizes that Joseph has been divinely given the interpretation, and that if the predicted disaster happens, no one is better positioned to guide Egypt through it. Joseph has already presented Pharaoh with the solution for surviving the 7 years of famine. Pharaoh also elevates Joseph through the ranks of Egyptian society. Pharaoh marries Joseph into a prestigious family. Pharaoh also makes Joseph second in command, which means he appointed Joseph as leader of at least the granaries of palace, and perhaps even as grand vizier of Egypt in general. It is difficult to know what position precisely Joseph obtained, since the titles used in this section are Hebrew terms, not words borrowed from Egyptian, which is important. It's an important note. Although they seem to reflect Egyptian positions. Although the idea of a Semite from Canaan attaining such a high status is abnormal, examples of Semitic high officials are known from Egyptian texts. As the years of plenty pass and the famine strikes the land, Joseph will be able to help Egypt, his family, and the rest of the world survive. It's also when some of the good drama starts to come in the story. Danger always has to be emphasized more when the goal is to preserve human life. Right. It seems just more obvious and less of... Maybe it's just the way they worded that is just kind of off. I don't know. But yeah, fair point. Joseph rises to power. This proposal pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find a man like this? And in whom is the Spirit of God?" Rhetorical. Pharaoh knows that Joseph can be a competent fill piece for the position. He knows that. I'll come back to that. In whom is the Spirit of God? Hebrew phrase used here could be a reference to an empowering by Joseph's God, Yahweh, or an Egyptian god. It may also be translated as the spirit of the gods and refer to the Egyptian pantheon in general. Since this is spoken by Pharaoh, he likely means that in his perception, the Egyptian gods are with Joseph. This is one that I would want to look at later, or if anybody has a tab open right now, to see Spirit of God pull the Hebrew and see what was used. I think most of us can probably guess, but I'd just be interested if it was for sure or not. What is the significance of the skinny cows not changing after they ate the fat cows? I'm so glad you said that, because that was my question as well. There's no explanation. I thought for a minute, am I missing like an aspect of the famine? Is there something very obvious that I'm just not thinking about in terms of, that was so obvious there was no need to explain it? It's in relation to the famine. Rodriguez said, right, but it still seems odd. Like why would it be so? I just don't get it. I don't get it. Maybe I'm stupid. I'm just not seeing it. Like obviously a famine causes, bodily reactions in the negative. Limited caloric intake. Famine equals skinny cows. Does it mean the warnings weren't heeded? I think, well, some of that will be answered. I just mean like the actual imagery itself. I think it could have been reached without that detail, is my point. Was why that was a question for me. Is the them eating, or the significance of the skinny cows not changing after they had eaten. You could completely remove that aspect of the story and still have what we have. So what is the purpose of that very specific detail? Rodriguez also was a divine warning. So the truth of the matter is as we may not completely know because we are not Joseph. I mean, fair enough. Fair enough. Very much possible. If anybody has a theory, I would like to hear it, because that stumps me as well. And unless I'm just overthinking it, which is a highly possible. Highly possible. I think it is as simple as if you ate 1,200 pounds of steak, you would look different. Right, but they don't. They don't look different. They're not changing after they ate the other cows. What is the significance of that? Maybe I'm overthinking it. I'll have to think about it a little bit more. But how does that make sense? Empty calories. How does it make sense? So obviously, yeah, if you ate 1,200, we're gonna go down a stupid rabbit hole right now. If you ate 1,200 pounds of steak, for sure you would look different, right? But then the skinny cows not changing after they had eaten the fat cows. How are we tying those together? Rodriguez said they don't look the same because they were able to receive the instructions properly and save the plenty 4 times of famine. Yeah, actually, I guess if you take the story to its full fruition, I suppose it does actually start to make more sense. I think it does actually make sense. Okay, let's finish it, because I think, actually, thank you, because I think that does answer the question, at least in part. The skinny cows do look the same. That's the puzzle. Right. Which is why the 1,200 pounds of steak thing I get, but that wasn't the case. They weren't looking different. They still look the same after eating another literal cow. But I think Rodriguez actually has a point. And I think once we get to the end of the whole thing, I think that's a fair interpretation. I'd be curious to read a commentary on it. I wonder what people are actually saying. But it makes a little bit more sense now, actually, if you think the story all the way through. If you know the story. If you don't, then just wait till the end. All right, where are we at? Spirit of God, 39. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards to the throne will I be greater than you. This is what the synopsis was kind of alluding to, a portion of it. Being that it's difficult to know which office Joseph was appointed to within the Egyptian bureaucracy.
because we just don't have the details. We can kind of insinuate, but it's not clear, in part because Hebrew terms were used instead of Egyptian terms. And so they weren't able to cross-reference that with actual Egyptian positions. So you just have a bunch of scholars kind of guessing, best guesses of what exactly his position was. So only as regard to the throne will I be greater than you. You could easily insinuate like he's extremely high, though. Number 2 in command, possibly. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. The signet ring, this is Pharaoh's ring of approval, essentially. It's like, it's, what was the thing that they used to do back in the day for like prom? Wouldn't you like put a pin on the girl? I'm talking like the 50s or 60s or something, maybe 70s. I don't remember. But you used to like give a girl a pin and go steady, and that was like a wedding ring before the wedding ring, or like a promise ring before you get married. This is a very similar thing, actually. All joking aside, it's actually a very similar thing. It was like a sign of approval from the Pharaoh to Joseph. So he gave him that. They went steady. And he made him ride his second chariot, which is more to add to what position he was, obviously very high. And they called out before him, bow the knee. Thus he set him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without your consent, no one shall lift up a hand or a foot in all the land of Egypt. We just keep stacking kind of validation to the fact that Joseph had to be very, very high up. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphenath Paneal gland. Zaphenath Paneal, I don't know. And he gave him in marriage Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. So Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. There's a few things there right quick. So the first name that I butchered, of the first of several that I butchered. Joseph is given an Egyptian name, though the narrative continues to refer to him as Joseph. The precise derivation and meaning of this name is unknown, which is a little bit aggravating for me personally. I don't know if that aggravates anybody else, but the fact that we really can't trace this back anywhere, I don't like it. I don't like it. But it's not the only time that happens. It actually happens a good amount in the Old Testament. And then gave him in marriage to Asenath. I don't know. Number 2 of the 3 butchered names. This name or title likely means she who belongs to Neath. Neath being kind of the end of the first name that Joseph got, but probably not. Neath is an Egyptian goddess. This name does not appear among many Egyptian texts, though. So not super. Oh my gosh. Not validated highly among many texts from Egypt. I'm totally blanking on the word that I'm trying to find. And then Potipharah, which sounds eerily similar to Potiphar, likely a variant of the name Potiphar, but probably not the same person as Joseph's former master, if you remember, which is why the name is familiar. And then the priest of On, who was Potipharah, the central location for the Egyptian worship of Ra, the sun god, which we'll briefly touch on Tuesday. What did I miss? If we're starving during famine, we're all skinny when we start out. It just takes time, and he takes a minute to just look at how things are immediately after the prophetic realm. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm trying to cook and talk this into the same time, so not everything is translating correctly. I totally understand. It's all good. The one after that, though, I cannot interpret. I can't interpret it. But I'm not even gonna try. Patricia, yeah, I've seen that in the movies. Treasury of the Glorious Rest. That's the translation I got. Sounds like Sheol to me. Agreed, Ghost. I just wonder if Sheol was something of a holding place. Sheol was something of the holding place because there was no resurrection of Jesus yet. But that's a conversation for another day. Which would mean that Sheol is no more from that theory, right? If it was a temporary holding place because there was no resurrected Jesus. I think it'd be an interesting conversation, especially when you get to Jesus specifically in the New Testament and Sheol. I think that would expand that specific dynamic of that specific topic. I have so many questions and ideas. Yeah, we all do. Girl, we all do. Okay, so gave him away a marriage. Potiphar, the priest of On. So Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old, which would be 13 years having passed since Joseph was sold into slavery initially in chapter 37. 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went through all the land of Egypt. During the 7 plentiful years, the earth produced abundantly, which would confirm the revelation, God's revelation, through Joseph, which would also, in turn, validate what Pharaoh believes of Joseph, which is that he is able to interpret, he hears from God, and that what Joseph says is to be taken seriously. So we have the confirmation of the revelation itself because it begins, and then we have the validation of Pharaoh's trust in Joseph because it begins. And he gathered up all the food of 7 years, of these 7 years, which occurred in the land of Egypt, and put the food in the cities. He put in every city the food from the fields around it. And Joseph stored up grain in great abundance, like the sand of the sea, until he ceased to measure it, for it could not be measured. Before the year of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph. Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore them to him. I wonder why the author felt the need to clarify that. It seems like something we could assume. I just got jumped out of my place. 2 sons were born to Joseph. This is from Logos. Like the land of Egypt during the 7 years of plenty, God blesses Joseph with fertility. His 2 sons will later be incorporated into the 12 tribes of Israel. Important note. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh. Manasseh. I don't know how to say that. I know I'm butchering that one. Manasseh. The actual Hebrew word, in no world am I going to try, but there it is. The Hebrew name there roughly means he who causes to forget. Hence Joseph's explanation of the name, in which he uses the similar sounding Hebrew verbal form nashashani. The odds were against him, especially because of the whole issue with his wife. I'm wondering why Pharaoh likened Joseph to Sheol. I'm not seeing the connection. What verse? And I'll pull back to it. What verse? Give me the verse. Okay. For he said, God has made me forget all of my hardship and all my father's house. And all my father's house, which is important for later. The name of the second he called Ephraim. For God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. I got bounced again. Hold on. The name there, Ephraim. The name is derived from the Hebrew verb para, meaning to be fruitful. Para. I need to hire somebody to just to help me with pronunciation. That would be a smart thing for me to do. What's the verse, y'all? I want to go back. but I don't remember the verse that this all began from. But we are just going to read the one chapter probably maybe we'll see. 53. Genesis 41, 45. Okay. Have we did you already look it up? Or we're at the very end of 41. Oh, okay. I'm with you. And where are you pulling Sheol from? Is that it? One sec. The Hebrew, the one who furnishes sustenance, the revealer of secrets, the God speaks and he lives. Some say the name is a Semitic form of an Egyptian name that means, says the God, he will live. Creator or preserver of life, the head of the Sacred College of Magicians. Another interpretation of the name is that it refers to that position. The Sacred College of Magicians. I would want to see where that came from. Where are you finding that? The translation. Are you in Blue Letter? Because I'm getting a Hebrew translation of he who deciphers the hidden. Interesting. See, this is why this is difficult. Did they have any alternatives on Blue Letter? I've got the only one, there's like 4 or 5 of them here, but the only one that's got me at least thinking like that makes sense is he who deciphers the hidden. Because contextually it would align beautifully. He who deciphers the unhid, or the he who deciphers the hidden is exactly what Joseph did. So contextually that makes perfect sense to me. But there's also, yeah, it's just a lot of argument. It seems like the Egyptian language refuses to claim it. They say it might have Egyptian origins, but there's no etymology behind it. This is actually really interesting. But if Sheol and the Chamber of Gopher are the same thing, I can see how those other translations were chosen. I just put the definition. What do you mean? I have a personal issue with Blue Letter Bible, but I'll pull it up. I have a personal bias against Blue Letter Bible. Ruth says, meaning unknown, but perhaps stored, beautiful rest. Etymology form 1, the verb to hide or store, and perhaps the verb to come to rest. Oh, you put it in Discord. Okay. Let me grippy grab it. Okay. So this is starting to align a very small amount, but at least a very small amount. Divine magician, astrologer, engraver, writer. Sense of one possessed of occult knowledge. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I already made myself a little note. I want to look into it. I'm curious, especially with the Sheol aspect of it. I'm very curious about that because I'm not seeing that. So I'm all the more curious. No, I know. I got you, Rodriguez. I switched gears in my head. I'm with you. I'm like obsessed with this now, though. I'm very, very curious. Look at the second post. What second post? There's only one. Or did you put something somewhere else? Are you confusing me now? I don't see anything. Direct me. In the meantime, this is great rabbit hole, though. This is fun rabbit hole. On Discord, I was just there. Girl, where in Discord? I'm in the voice thing. I'm in the chat. And all I got is the screenshot. Here's the root word in verse. Oops, I meant to say verse 8. That's what I was just looking at. I just didn't show it on the screen. It's right here though. I read it. So it's this is what Rodriguez, we went back and forth very, very briefly a while ago. Divine magician, astrologer, engraver, writer, only in derivative sense of one possessed of occult knowledge. And then, okay. And then Sheol, underworld, grave, hell, the underworld, Sheol, the Old Testament designation for the abode of the dead, place no return without praise of God, wicked sent there for punishment. See, and the funny thing is like, it's not consistent. It's not consistent. It, or at least begs the question of, in the New Testament, where does Jesus actually go? Because it just becomes muddy. It becomes very muddy of what exactly Sheol is biblically. The concept of like Sheol that we've talked about a bajillion times, that I feel is easier to grasp and is more consistent. When you try to relate the old to the new, old covenant, new covenant, with Jesus's interaction with Sheol, when compared to the Jewish understanding of Sheol, in my opinion, it becomes tough. It becomes hard to kind of make click properly, but not 100%. Of course, Sheol is only an Old Testament word, right? But there's a heavy section of the New Testament where it's highly likely it's involved, that it's a part of it. Outside of that, we have nothing, because the New Testament just didn't care about the concept at all. And then the New Testament became extremely obsessive about hell, specifically. Definitely complicates things. I get it, for sure. And that's another shift to be talked about, is kind of the I don't know if it's irony, but kind of, that the Old Testament Sheol was the thing. And that in the New Testament, Sheol didn't really exist. You have the one interaction with Jesus, but outside of that, nobody else cared about it. The early church did not care at all about it, seemingly, but they sure cared about hell. Hell became a pretty frequented topic, but Sheol not so much. There are, Ghost just said it, there's a huge portion of Christianity that believes that they're the exact same thing, that they're interchangeable. And just the ways the culture spoke of them, and obviously the terms used because of language, were just different. But there's a large portion of Christianity, including scholarship, that does not believe that. They believe they're entirely different things. But Ghost said Sheol and Hades are the same because of their attributes, not their names, which is a huge portion of scholarship, but the other side exists. Rodriguez says, but again, that was post-resurrection, ascension. So is that a factor that played into the translations? New Testament, that is. Potentially. I don't know. Let me do this. How much time do we have? We got a little bit of time. And we're like basically at the end of 41. So let me just read the rest of it. And then I want to pull up that section of the New Testament, if I can quickly find it, with Jesus and Sheol. And then we'll see. And if you guys have anything, let me know, because we're going to have time. We're going to have a few minutes. 54. The 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph had said. There was famine in all the lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph. What he says to you, do. So when the famine had spread over all the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Moreover, all the earth came to Egypt, to Joseph, to buy grain, because the famine was severe all over the earth. Not the entire world, but in reference to Egypt and the immediate territories therein. Not the entire flat earth. was affected. Now, let me grab this. Jesus's descent into Sheol is often depicted as a conquest. This is interesting, and some Christians believe that Jesus's soul spent 3 days there. Let me make this pop up on the screen. There we
Hey
go.
Joe, when you get a chance, can you scroll down in the voice call in? I posted the name that the Pharaoh gave Joseph. That's where all this Sheol talk started.
Right here. So there it is. Treasury of the glorious rest. A name given by Pharaoh to Joseph. Strong's definition.
Now, I know nothing about how that
Hmm.
translation was arrived at, but just taking it at face value, that says Sheol to me. I just don't see the connection between Joseph and Sheol.
Treasury of the glorious rest. Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely get what you got there. Let me pull it up. Because I want to know how they got it and why it seems like it's
And that's why I brought up Chamber of Guff, because it's the treasury of souls, so it all kind of ties in.
right, right. All right, here's this, and then I'll make it big. This is a pure Egyptian word and has been variously explained. Some think it means creator or preserver of life, interprets it as governor of the district of the place of life. Goshen, the chief city of which was Pithom, the place of life. Others explain it as meaning a revealer of secrets or the man whom secrets are revealed.
And I think all of those descriptions apply to Sheol. So there's something
Yeah.
weird going on.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I think so, like, to be the rainer on parades, the revealer of the hidden one, I feel like can contextually be explained pretty easily. The rest of this, though, I mean, some of it, though, to be like devil's advocate, preserver of life contextually makes sense with what's going on right now in the story. Creator, not so much. Governor of the district of the place of life, I mean, I guess, with what's going on with the famine, the place of life. But then what you had found is still different. Dictionary, treasury of the glorious rest. I feel like if that's the legitimate translation, if that's the truth, I think contextually it doesn't make sense. And I think there's got to be something else to it. But some of these other definitions of it, I feel like could be explained away by the text. I wish I knew where they're getting this from, because the articles I was very briefly scanning said that the Egyptians don't claim any of it. They say it's not found in any of their text. So I wonder where the hell they're actually pulling this from. Now, and then got questions of saying, says the God he will live is the translation, and they put a source here from 1988 translating Zapheneth to mean God speaks or says the God, seems to go along with Potiphar's acknowledgement that the wise Joseph had the spirit of God with him, which again, like, contextually makes sense. It's a good explanation, but says who?
So something I've brought up in past streams is that I actually think we stream from the nodal network. So, and the core is the last point in that network before it arrives in our brain. So I think the nodal network is where all consciousness comes from, and it just travels down a path of reduction until it arrives at us. So all those descriptions you were reading make sense to me based on what I already believe about this network. of nodes, of which the sun and planets and pineal glands are part of.
So do
If
you?
that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. Yeah. So is your perspective kind of like be damned which one is most true because all of them are true and possibly just different iterations of different authors throughout history trying to explain the one truth of it. Is that kind of how
Yep.
you see? Okay.
Yep. Exactly.
I mean, I definitely get that. Yeah. I think where I get
But they
stuck,
don't know anything about like nodes, you know?
right, right. Yeah, true. Where I get stuck is the cynical side of my brain that wants to just explain it away. Cause that's like that makes sense to me. I think that's a good argument. The cynical side of me just wants to say this all most of it can be explained away by the immediate context without thinking deeper. But then the more rational side of me says if I were to have that line of thinking with other things, I would not view the world at all the way that I do. So this is just one that I probably have to sit with for a little bit, but I'm definitely with you.
I mean, does Joseph preserve and create life or sustain something like Sheol?
I mean, not like that. I don't know.
Not exactly like
No,
it, but
but like
that
it
particular attribute of like a preserver or sustainer.
for sure, without doubt. So then it's the well, why would it need to be explained by anything other than the immediate context, which would be the famine? But then obviously the other side, I think what you're saying makes sense.
Exactly. Like when someone says something slightly clever, we call them Einstein. It doesn't mean they're actually Einstein. It's just we're
Right.
trying to convey something of like a shared attribute.
So I guess so then this would be the question, which will be completely clarified for me. Do you think the famine was literal? Or is this something that you would extrapolate all the way out to saying this is the way that they're choosing to explain a much deeper thing?
I actually don't know.
Okay. I was just curious because that would kind of change the way that I perceive it. If I were to suddenly, and I don't know either personally, I've read it both ways. I've read all of the Old Testament both ways, where none of it is real at all, none of it actually happened, and all of it is a deeper meaning, and the other way as well. But I guess that would change it for me. Is if the story was literal, then I would have a harder time not just saying, well, that's exactly what he's doing. He's preserving life in the immediate context through food stores during the famine. But if not, if like potentially this is the way, which is what I totally believe about the beginning of Genesis, I don't think any of that is actually what happens. 0%. I think it's them trying to explain something that is incomprehensible to the human mind. So if this was the same thing, then I think I would have no problem at all having that perspective. Because what the way you explained all of that, I think makes absolute sense, 100%. Especially if this is not a literal famine, and if something else is, there's an attempt to explain something else.
But I mean, even if it was a literal famine, I don't think that would matter either because his interpretation is preserving. It's like a warning, hey, there's going to be a famine. We need to start saving stuff in the good times to preserve our lives in the bad times.
Well, right, but then what would Sheol? Why would it even have to be included?
I don't know. Ask the Pharaoh. I mean, he is preserving life. It's like a preservation thing. It's a preservation metaphor,
No, I get it. I
but
get it.
also like a sustenance metaphor. It's. I don't know. I need to think about it some more.
It's interesting. Yeah, so do I, for sure. The thing that's really killing me, and if anybody ends up finding out, please tag me, is I'm really curious how anybody is getting a valid understanding of what this word meant. My assumption is that most people are completely guessing. And I bet if a lot of this was traced back, uh, I just wouldn't be shocked at all if people were just making stuff up. Because at least on Got Questions, which is a terrible source for anybody who's not hung around for a long time, I mean, they're citing things not even that old at all. 1988. So then I'd want to go look at this and see where they got their information from. But this differs from Blue Letter, which differs from an Egyptian source I found, which differs from what AI aggregated for me. There's no cohesiveness whatsoever. So I'd be really curious to see like if somebody actually
I kind of think
trues.
there is a cohesiveness though.
Well, in theme, agreed. I agree with that. Yeah. But in
But
the
I mean, they
literal
need to show
nature,
their work. I don't know how they arrived.
right, right. But even then, there's some that's not cohesive at all. There's definitely a theme to the Sheol thing, where there were a number of those that were kind of iterations of the same concept. But then there were a bunch more, at least 7 or 8 more that I had found that weren't at all. It'd be something totally different. So there is a theme on one end, and then there were some different ones that had nothing to do with the treasure of the glorious rest, had nothing to do with kind of the Sheol side of it. But I'd just be really curious. I'm definitely going to look into it. This is one of
Yeah,
those
same.
things. It'll drive me nuts. Totally nuts. Let me see. David said he thinks it's literal. I think it's I lean towards the literal. I always have. Like I believe a good portion of the Old Testament is completely literal. Is mostly literal with, dramatization and some theatrics probably added. But the concepts, the significance, the historical acts, I believe a good portion of it is literal, if not possibly the majority. So I'm with you on that.
It's not like Egypt has never had a famine, you know?
Right, right. And I just don't think you have a lot of reasons to think it's not. I don't think there's enough to think that a good portion of it was not just as literal as it could be for being as old as it was and being retold verbally for a very long time. Sheol could be mentioned because Pharaoh's dream wasn't the only dream that was interpreted. There was also other people in prison where the dreams were interpreted, also that involved death. I'm going to have to think about that one. I think what I'm going to do when we get off is break this name down as much as humanly possible and see what I can find and then try to go from there. This is one of those things that does not happen often. This will drive me literally crazy. I'm fully roped into this one, which is why I can see why Sheol was involved. Rodriguez said. David said, I agree. When someone doesn't know, they make something up to appear wise. 100%. And Sheol is also a prison. Oh, good God. Ugh. This is one of those ones, man. This hasn't happened in a while.
Usually when someone gets a new name, it's pretty important and there's a reason for it.
Yeah. Yeah. There is. And this isn't the only time where it's left nothing but freaking questions. But this is probably one of the worst ones, in my opinion. This one's pretty bad in terms of not being able to trace it back and try to find something cohesive.
I mean, there has to be something. Maybe have any Egyptologists looked at it?
That's
Does it
what
even
I'm.
sound like an Egyptian name?
Kind of. But what I think the only thing you could do, and what I'm gonna do when we're done here, is just break the name apart into sections. And as soon as you find something that's close, you can kind of go from there. That's what a lot of the biblical scholars had to do with a lot of the weird and sometimes made up names. I think beyond that, if you can't get anywhere, I think you're screwed. And I'd be like, I find it very unlikely that I'm going to do this and get anywhere at all. Because I feel like if we haven't gotten anywhere other than where we've gotten, I don't think there's anywhere to go. I think perhaps this is something that is either exactly what you were saying, because I think that makes a lot of sense, or is something that we'll probably never grasp because it made sense to the people in the immediate context, and then maybe a bit beyond it too, but then completely died off with the generation.
Being wise is to just say, I don't know. Yeah. Well, this is one of
I
those
think you
times.
might be
I
muted.
agree with that.
Okay.
Am I muted?
I thought you might be, but maybe not. I guess not.
You're good. Yeah.
No. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, in terms of some of like the ideologies that you already have, and you're saying that they're biblically based, I just feel like there's already a mindset that you have in place. Because the fact of the matter is, for every word, there's several definitions. So I feel like by default, you would have several different ideologies and examples to go off of. That's my whole thing. Is I just want to make sure that everything is incorporated into our ideas, that they have the
Yeah, me
full
too.
definition, not just one. I don't mean to be a jerk, but
There's tons of definitions to the word. Joe read them off, and most of them have connotations that lead back to Sheol. So I mean,
hmm
I'm not like pulling it out of thin air saying it means like
I don't
apple
think
or
you
something
are.
weird.
No, I don't think you are. I just feel like sometimes you only take one part of the definition and kind of go with it.
What's
And
the other part? The or is that just an example? Is there another part that we're
no,
not paying attention to?
that was just one example. And here's the
Okay.
thing, like, I get it. I was always like that. I think many of us are. I just feel like it can kind of box us, you know what I mean, and limit us to some degree. And I just
Metaphors connect through attributes. So the attribute
get
is
that.
the only important thing, not the word.
Actually, I would say the word is important. It's completely important because that's where the attributes stem from. So let the people kind of, determine their own version of interpretation and ideology based off of all the meanings of the root word.
Right, exactly. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what we're trying to do. So here, Wikipedia, which I would never, ever, ever say to use as a resource. I do want to, though this is interesting. I was reading while you guys were just chatting there. The one who reveals secrets. The reason for these translations is that the feminine noun that I'm not going to try refers to something hidden or secret in Hebrew, deriving from the root blah, meaning to hide or conceal, while another section is a verb deriving from the root, not going to try, meaning to discover, cipher, decipher, or decode. This would give us the literal translation of Sepheneth Panael, whatever the hell it is, from Hebrew as he who deciphers the hidden.
Right. So
And
this is the Old Testament.
yeah, of course, yeah.
So
And this is from, okay, and this is the important part. Between the 11th and the 12th century, in his commentary on the Torah. The Jewish interpretation is received in early Protestant translation, the Geneva Bible, as the expounder of secrets, while the authorized version of 1611 has in the margin, which in the Coptic signifies a revealer of secrets, or the man to whom secrets are revealed. I think no matter which way you skin this, 80%, I think the interpretation makes sense. I think there's a 20%, the ones that I had found before, that didn't align with this theme. But I think the definition seems to point to this theme in general, at the very least, kind of across the board. From
Hey
blue
Joe, do you
water to
think you
here.
could share with me those other like the 20% that were like outliers?
Yes,
I want to look at them.
I'll try to pull them back up. I think. Yeah, I'll try to pull them back up when we get off. I think, if I remember, there were like between 5 and 7 of them that weren't jiving. But yeah, I'll grab them and I'll put them out there. The rest of this, though, I think is interesting. At the very least, it's an interesting way to interpret it. The expounder of secrets, and his work on Genesis, Jerome gives as the Latin translation, Salvator Mundi, Savior of the World. The Christian interpretation, does this even relate? Early Egyptologists have interpreted the name as
equivalent to Coptic. Not gonna try, not gonna try, not gonna try. Meaning the salvation of the age.
Mm.
Ugh. Since the decipherment of the hieroglyphics, the Egyptologists have interpreted the final element in the name as containing the Egyptian word la 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 la, offered a full reconstruction. The God speaks and he lives. However, pointed out this interpretation's shortcomings. Good God. This is an intense one. Like, this is not normal.
All from one name.
Right. And like this happens periodically, but it's so infrequent where it's this wild.
It's always the important words too.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, this is gonna drive me literally crazy. This is the second time in like 2 weeks where this has happened to me. The other time is I was looking for a word that I still have not been able to find while driving with Kat in the car one day. And for 2 weeks, at least once a day, I've thought about this and it's made me literally anxious. And this is the same exact thing. This is going to make me extremely uneasy until
Wait, what'd you say made you anxious?
I was telling Kat about something from my contracting days. I was trying to think of a word for when you're in a new development and you've laid like the plumbing and some of the underground electric and stuff like that, roads, but nothing else. There's a specific word for it that I've never had any issue with, and I cannot think of the damn word, and I can't Google to find the word. I've just been completely without the word, and it drove me insane. And it's been like 2 weeks now where on a daily basis, it's made me actually anxious and uncomfortable that I can't think of this word that I'm trying to think of. And this is how I feel again right now. This is becoming a theme for me.
I'm no ambassador for any of this crap, but I did have ashwagandha earlier, so I'm probably a little bit more chill than you because it's ashwagandha, not ayahuasca or whatever the other one's called.
Ayahuasca. Yeah, ashwagandha is in everything now. AG1 has ashwagandha in it. Kat and I were just looking at this morning.
I'm gonna try to find that word too because you just gave me the brain virus and now I gotta know.
Dude, it's driving me crazy because what we were talking about is where we used to live in Florida where we met. There's this whole like area of development behind a movie theater that there were going to be houses and shops and all this stuff, and they ran out of funding. So they had done the underground plumbing, they had laid some underground electrical, they had paved the roads, but there was nothing built. And all of that stuff before the actual buildings has a word, and I cannot think of the word, and I've tried to Google it. It's a specific odd word that if you're not a contractor, I don't know why you'd know it, but I just can't think of it, and it's driven me absolutely insane, totally insane, and I just can't do it. AI is not helping me. Google's not helping me. It's been useless.
If AI can't help you, then
what's that?
Maybe that word doesn't exist, bro.
No, it exists. I would lose my mind if it didn't exist.
Ashwagandha, dude.
It's a word.
It's the Mandela effect.
It's the Mandela effect. Oh my god. Yeah, I'll take some ashwagandha and try.
You're just remembering a fake word, man.
It could very well be true. I'm gonna be ripping my hair out all night. Oh, but this is the same thing. I feel very similarly. With that, I'm gonna get the hell out of here and try to go think about something that is not this. But I guess this was good. This was aggravating as hell, but it was good to see you guys. Tuesday, we're doing the Trinity. So as I've been doing, I put together a fun little slideshow. And if you guys have anything you want to add, because I think I forgot to do it last week. Yeah. I'll make a forum post in Discord. You should see it on the screen now for the Trinity. And if you guys want to put anything in there, you can. Or if you want me to add anything to the slideshow, I can. Or if there's a specific like topic within the topic that you want to make sure we talk about, you can send me that ahead of time in here. And I will make sure it makes it into the slideshow so we don't forget about it. If you have videos, pictures, whatever. But if it's a video, like 2 minutes or less. 2 minutes or less. Unless it's really, really good, I guess. But I'll I'll post that and get that ready. And then Thursday we're in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Look at Cat.
Joe, I was.
What's that?
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
I was just gonna say that a couple weeks ago, I know we were talking about like the whole. Was it Simeon and Levi?
Yes.
No.
No, you're right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how I questioned about them being taken out of something.
Yes.
The reason why I didn't post it in the chat is because I think that question is answered in like, I want to say Genesis chapter 48 and 49. And it had directly to do with their piece of shit father's blessing.
Okay.
I don't like him, Joe.
I know. I don't blame you. I get where you're coming from with it for sure. That story aggravates me. It's
yeah. But anyways, that's the only reason why I didn't post it, because I was like, oh, we're gonna get to it soon, so I'll just leave it alone.
Okay. Fair enough. Cool. Then yeah, when we get there, just make it blatantly apparent.
You got it. I will holler.
Retainage release? No, but it's a word like infrastructure. It's a word like that. Infrastructure was the best I could come up with, but there's another specific weird word, unless it is infrastructure, and I just refuse to admit it, but I don't think that's the word. That's got to be it. Pay attention.
That's what I thought of right away, but I figured it couldn't be that.
But I feel like that's the word I used. But maybe that was just me being class A idiot, saying the correct word and just really feeling like I did not have it. What's that?
Type A. You're saying like personality.
Is that type asshole?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's just very particular.
Well, that is definitely me. I need to take that stupid personality test again. You guys were all talking.
Oh yeah, if you're INFJ, I don't know that you're like, because I'm an INFJ. I can be pretty kind of like whatever.
Oh, that is not me. I am
right.
I'm a fucking nightmare.
I don't know.
Nightmare. If you have a link for it, will you send it to me? I know when you guys were all going crazy on it again a couple weeks ago or whatever. I
got post the results.
Yeah,
I also have
left out. What's that?
So I also have asshole tendencies too, which I think is part of it.
You certainly do. But we're a mixed bag of tricks, you know. Nobody's all one thing. I can also be like, F it.
I'm so aware.
Let it go.
Yeah.
Little does Joe know, Mystic, it has also gotten to me a bit. We work together. I should know this. Yeah, it's not procurement. If anything, it's infrastructure. But that's the word I used. So unless I just refused to admit it or was like convinced that I didn't say it, I don't know. Y'all, I don't know, but this is not worth. I'll look at. Yeah, that's actually a good idea. I'll do that. Synonyms of infrastructure, but it's something like that. But maybe that's the fucking word, because that means the same thing. It would be infrastructure, the infrastructure of his own area. Right. I need to go take some ashwagandha, some ayahuasca, ashwagandha, all the
not that one.
The herbal A words.
Ghost does his stuff, and then I do wine and what.
I don't think anybody here does.
I've never done that stuff though.
Or ayahuasca.
Anyway.
There are some people here who probably would if they got offered a round trip to the rainforest.
Oh, in South America.
Yeah,
I'd rather not vomit my guts out, to be honest.
Yeah, it actually looks.
I mean, not everyone is like that, but I don't want to take the risk. Yeah, I just don't. I got too much stuff going on. I don't need another.
I got too much stuff going on. That's a fair point. All right, I'm out. Y'all have a lovely night.
Later.
See
Bye,
you guys.
guys.
See you guys. Love you. Bye.